Hello. Good evening, everyone. I'm Arushi Bisht from Symbiosis School of Liberal Arts, and today I'll be sharing my insight on how underwater domain awareness framework can help operationalize key provisions of the United Nations Conventions on the Law of the Sea, or UNCLOS, with a focus on the Indo-Pacific region. UNCLOS is often described as the Constitution of the Oceans, and it came into force in 1994, providing a legal framework for all marine and maritime activities. It covers everything from maritime zones and resource rights to navigation, environmental protection, and dispute resolution. But UNCLOS, while ambitious and comprehensive in its language, often falls short in implementation, particularly in regions like the Indo Pacific, where geopolitical tensions, weak enforcement, and environmental pressures intersect to form one of the most globally contested maritime spaces. There is a clear gap between what the treaty outlines and what states are able or willing to do. This is where the UDA framework comes in. By offering the technical infrastructure, sensor networks, and data sharing mechanisms that UNCLOS lacks. Through my research, I have found four major operational gaps with which the UDA framework can help bridge. Let's begin with environmental protection, which is addressed in Part 12 of the UNCLOS, that is, Articles 192 to 206. These articles place broad obligations on states to prevent marine pollution and conduct environmental impact assessments. However, these obligations are often vague and difficult to enforce. For example, take underwater noise. Even though UNCLOS defines energy as a form of pollution, it has no concrete rules to limit sonar use or ship noise, which is a major issue in biodiversity hotspots like the Bay of Bengal or the South China Sea. The impacts on marine mammals, reef ecosystems, and even fish migration are well documented, yet the convention remains silent on practical measures. The UDA framework offers a direct solution here. Using passive acoustic sensors and autonomous underwater vehicles, or AUVs, one can detect and localize noise hotspots. By mapping where ship engines and sonar use are concentrated, it becomes possible to introduce speed limits or seasonal quiet zones, turning vague duties into actual governance tools. The UDA also tackles the issue of sediment runoff. For instance, in the Mekong Delta, high resolution turbidity monitoring can track sediment loads from upstream dams, allowing coastal states to understand how activities in other countries are affecting their marine ecosystems. This data can then trigger targeted EIAs, something UNCLOS calls for but cannot operationalize on its own. And when we look at large scale environmental damage, like China's island building and dredging in the Spratlys, which has destroyed nearly 19 square kilometers of reef, it's clear that UNCLOS has no teeth. But UDA, with satellite linked hydrophones and sediment sensors, can at least document and quantify the destruction. That is the first step towards accountability, even when formal enforcement isn't immediately possible. Next, let's turn to Part 5, which governs exclusive economic zones or EEZs and fisheries management. UNCLOS Article 61 says that coastal states must manage fish stocks sustainably and share scientific data. However, many Indo Pacific countries lack the capacity to monitor their waters. Meanwhile, distant water fishing fleets, especially from China, operate with impunity. Illegal, unreported, and unregulated IUU fishing is rampant. The Bay of Bengal alone supports over 4.5 million fish workers, yet its fisheries are severely threatened by IUU practices. These are not just environmental concerns, but socio-economic threats to livelihoods and food security. The UDA framework addresses this by enabling real-time vessel tracking using a combination of hydrophones and AIS data. Even if a vessel turns off its transponder, its engine noise or sonar pings are still detectable in this way. AUVs equipped with echo sounders can also estimate fish biomass and reef health, which is essential for evidence based fisheries management. With this kind of baseline data, regulations can be tailored to fit actual conditions. In practice, the UDA framework makes it possible for countries like India and Bangladesh to collaborate, deploying joint sensor arrays to monitor trawler activity and share findings. This data can then be fed into regional fisheries organizations, building trust as well as exposing discrepancies in catch reports or access agreements. This leads us to the next operational gap. UNCLOS Articles 122 and 123 encourage states in semi enclosed seas like the Bay of Bengal or the South China Sea to cooperate on marine management. These areas involve overlapping interests and high marine traffic, making cooperation essential. But again, these articles are purely aspirational. There is no mechanism forcing countries to share data or conduct joint research. Cooperation remains voluntary and often absent. The UDA transforms this dynamic. It promotes interoperable sensor networks and common data platforms that can link multiple countries. For example, real time data from Indonesian, Malaysian, and Indian sensors could be integrated to form a big picture view of the Bay of Bengal. Regional observatories can use shared hydrophones, turbidity sensors, and even drones to monitor and respond to environmental events such as oil spills or sediment plumes across borders. This isn't just about technology, it's about trust building. By making data openly accessible and jointly collected, states can cooperate even when they disagree on sovereignty. By generating jointly owned data, the UDA reduces suspicion and builds the kind of trust that UNCLOS recommends but cannot engineer by itself. Next, UNCLOS Part 15 sets out peaceful dispute resolution mechanisms, such as the International Tribunal for Law of the Sea, the International Court of Justice, and arbitration panels. But participation is voluntary, and these mechanisms often avoid politically sensitive issues like sovereignty. An example of the ineffectiveness is the 2016 arbitral ruling against China, which invalidated its 9-line claims in the South China Sea. China simply ignored this decision, and UNCLOS had no tools to enforce compliance. Here, the UDA plays a supporting role. It provides an objective, continuous record of what's happening at sea: vessel tracks, underwater construction, and environmental degradation. If China starts dredging on a contested reef, sensors can record it in real time, and this evidence can be used in diplomatic or legal forums. More importantly, knowing that everyone is watching raises the cost of unilateral actions. UDA doesn't replace dispute settlement mechanisms, but it strengthens them by often offering credible science based evidence. Collectively, these elements show that UDA unifies UNCLOS's domains into a single adaptive governance framework. Rather than treating environmental protection, fisheries management, regional cooperation, and dispute resolution as siloed legal regimes, the UDA offers a common operational picture built on shared data. In practice, this means that one sensor network serves multiple purposes. The same hydrophone array that detects illegal fishing can map ocean noise pollution. Turbidity sensors monitoring river plumes can also flag dredging near disputed islets. This integrative approach overcomes capacity gaps of many Indo-Pacific states that lack R&D resources. By pooling sensor inputs and analytics, even small nations can gain insight. Real-time data sharing also enables dynamic management. Managers can adjust zone protections or ship routing on the fly in response to actual conditions. In climate sensitive regions like the Mekong Delta or coral atolls, such agility is vital. While static UNCLOS prescriptions fall short in a changing ocean, UDA makes governance adaptive by facilitating instant risk assessment and regulatory tuning. Ultimately, by enabling collaborative monitoring and continuous information flow, the UDA framework empowers littoral states to act on UNCLOS principles and not just affirm them, fostering sustainable stewardship of the shared seas even when the political will is lacking. Thank you.